No candidates for open forum. Hearing none. The next item is celebrating district successes, and we're not going to celebrate quite as much as we were planning on because boys, wrestlers, Mike Olson and Davis brothers, Cameron and Logan, are playing baseball. It's their first day baseball practice, and they weren't so bold as to miss the first day of baseball practice. So we have elderly hockey, girls hockey team, which is another cause for celebration.
So Paul, why don't you come on up to run? And then girls and coach, why don't you come on up to the front and stand in front of the TV up here. Come on up here. Coaches. Yep. No, just we could tell a little bit about their success. Or
So
you guys can take pictures if you want or whatever. So don't be shy.
I don't have a microphone, so I'll turn my coaching voice on here and make sure everybody can hear us. So we've got Coach Goskison and Coach Palmerson here with a few of the members of the girls hockey team. A handful were not able, or I'd say about 20 or so weren't able to make it tonight. Again, starting our spring sports, and a handful are also rehearsing for the Tigers Roar, which is coming up this weekend too. So kids staying active and involved. But those that were able to make it here, Coach, do you want to introduce some of the girls here that are with?
I could.
All right.
So I'm Mark Goskison. This is Araya Hansen, Morgan Goskison, Kara Erickson, Rachel Doppelhammer, Lillian Hernandez, Taylor Larson, Pepe, no, it's not Pepe, Olivia Ellsworth, and then Emery Nelson and Ed Palmerson. So, and I also would like to, thank you guys very much for the support and stuff. And, the girls had a great time. It was a great learning experience all the way around and just a great time. So thank you guys.
So when the season started, what'd you think? Did you think you had a shot or?
Well, we did exactly as planned, and we won one more game than last year. And so our plan for next year is to win one more game than we did this year and go from there. So we don't want to, overdo it, but yet that's our goals and plans, and we can do it. So.
There's one more sneak in.
Oh, Anna Shaw just walked in too. So. And Lucy Stay will probably be here, but she's running a little late too.
Pretty special group, making history for Albert Lee. First girls team to make the state tournament for Albert Lee. So very proud of this group, coaches and athletes.
So very much.
So who wants to share what was the coolest thing about going to St. Paul?
Ooh, they had this stand full of snacks just for all the players, like in between the games, before the games, and after. This big booth for the teams to get snacks, and there's like wax and tape.
You could do skate sharpening.
Yeah, there's
It
stuff
was really cool.
The game.
We got to like warm up under the XL Energy Center, like where the Wild do. And that was really cool. We were like right next to their locker room.
Cool.
And the benches were really high, so most people, their feet were swinging.
Really hot in the locker rooms.
Oh yeah, it was really hot. And they had carpet in the locker rooms, which was really slippery, and I almost fell over like 3 times.
I don't like the carpet in schools.
Yeah, and like right when we pulled up, it was like you're pulling up to the prison, and you wait. They come up to the bus, and then they open the door and let you in. So.
You have to be escorted everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The refs come in.
And Lucy Stay, she just walked in. She's down there. She's one of our senior captains. So.
Hi.
What was your favorite part?
Of like the season or just like
The X Center.
Oh gosh. Everything. I mean probably just playing there the first game. I mean that sounds really basic with the whole thing, but I mean the whole time we were there, I don't know what you guys, I mean we all were, we walked in, we're like, whoa, what's going on? Everyone there has like been there before. And it was just cool to see everything, like they treat you so good, and like they have all this stuff that they give you before games to make sure you have your tape. And then they've got like protein shakes and like snacks and stuff, and being able, like our locker room was right next to the Wild locker room, so that was really cool. And then just being underneath and like seeing that, because you don't get to see that unless you're playing. And then just, I don't know, going onto the ice is just so crazy, because I mean I've been there watching games before, and it's like now we're playing here. So,
Did you learn anything special from Hermantown or teams of that caliber? And you played a great game, but they've been there before.
Yep, and there's something that you always, I mean, watching other teams, you always learn something, you always see something different, and that's part of, why I coach other things too. So like I coach a U19 national team too. So you always learn from other teams, so that's kind of why I do it. And I don't know if you guys watch the boys, so the Andover game, just the way they move the puck. So anytime, even if you watch a game on TV and watch what they do, you learn something from it. And there's always things to take away. And hopefully the girls see that when they're on the ice. It's a little bit harder, but hopefully they pick up on it. And
So did you hear our fans?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'd say we had the best crowd of the tournament.
Yep, for sure.
It was broadcast in Florida where I watched it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so good job.
Yeah, my cousins in Florida were watching too.
I'll say this isn't, it's not a complacent bunch. They've already reached out about their strength program for this off season and this summer and starting to put things in the works. And so they're a hard-working group, and that's what makes them so good. And we'll see more success in the future.
All right. Well, congratulations. Great job.
Actually, did you need a photo? We got it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Coach.
Yeah, you coached me way back.
All right, do I have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
I approve, or I'll motion to approve.
It's been moved by Kim, seconded by Angie. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. One note on the consent items, Dennis informs me that,
And Shelby Evans.
oh! From what I've seen of this group, if some others trickle in, they won't be bashful to announce the fact. It's a good thing, good thing. Dennis has been appointed as one of the coaches, so he will abstain from voting on 6.1. 6.1, right. All right. Consent items. Motion to approve consent items.
I'll move to approve consent.
Been moved by Kim.
I'll second.
Seconded by Bruce. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention.
Just on 6.1.
Just on 6.1. All right, Superintendent's report.
Today is the start of fourth quarter for us, and with that, the high school is moving to a plan for their study halls that they have throughout the day. They're going to either have them in the commons or in the auditorium. Most of them will be in the commons except around the lunch periods. And with that, if we are short staff, we will be able to flex some classes into the larger areas to be covered by the staff who are covering the study halls. So this is, we've tried it sporadically throughout the second semester, and now Mr. Dibble has staff prepared to do that. And of course, with that, all assignments will be pushed out online, so the kids will have the homework once if their teacher is not there, or they don't have a sub for that individual room. We have, as you know, with the baseball team, spring activities are starting already today. We've got Tigers Roar this weekend. For the first time in I don't know how long, we have a spring musical this year. So we have a fall musical, and we will have a spring musical. That'll be April 7th through the 9th. For the first time in 2 years, Southwest Middle School will be conducting exploratories where they're actually be going off-site. That's a real positive for our students to get out and explore different things. We had a presentation about the Hormel and the Hormel Institute. The Southwest Middle School students will be going there on April 27th to do a tour of that and meet with the researchers there. So that's what I have tonight.
Thank you. Should we start with this end of the table? Kristen?
Is it on? Okay. Really, from the teacher standpoint, what I wanted to address tonight was to first thank the school board for giving us these Wednesdays for planning. We've heard a lot of feedback from teachers, some parents, especially 612, and students, 612, on the benefits of those. And I did have a teacher who sent me quite a lengthy kind of reflection upon those Wednesdays. So I just wanted to give you some of the things that he said. He's a first-year teacher at the high school. He said, first and foremost, it's been wonderful to catch up on grading. And some days, he says, on a couple of Wednesdays, he spent the entire day just going through all of his Google Classroom work, getting caught up on that. And another big benefit for him has been to plan curriculum with his team. And not just curriculum, but really to plan engaging and collaborative activities for his students to work on. So having that time with his fellow teachers has been great. And the other thing he mentions is mental health for himself and his students. He said he feels a heightened energy on Thursdays when staff and students come back, and giving students that time to just complete their work for full credit has been wonderful. His last line is, I want to thank the district and those that decided to incorporate these into our calendar this year. I do not know what I have done with what I would have done without them. And I think we as teachers just recognize how the last 2 years have been very stressful, and they have just been really kind of rough. And so these days have been a really nice respite for us to have that time with each other, to focus on our collaboration and on our students. And then something else that I wanted to mention was that we are not the only district doing things like this. The South St. Paul High School has what they call What I Need Wednesday, and it's an optional day for students to come to school if they have a C or higher in their classes. If it's a C- or lower, they come in and work with teachers in smaller groups to get caught up. And failing grades at that high school have dropped by 50% already this school year, so they're hoping to continue that next year. It's a later start. Teachers have collaboration time in the morning and then time with students later. So it's interesting to see how different districts are incorporating those kinds of days within their schools. So thank you for that. We all appreciate it. And that's all I have.
All right. That's a cool idea. I don't have too much to report. I attended my very first policy meeting, committee meeting 2 weeks ago, and we covered the proposed changes that are on the agenda tonight. So I won't go into those details because we will in just a little bit. But I did get to talk to Mary Jo at the start of that and understand better the process for making these changes to policies. So I appreciated that.
We had the business ed meeting. Kim was at that as well, so I'll let her fill in some spots. She had quite a bit of the knowledge there. Talked about at the start those slides about what grads are doing after graduation, and it showed that 30% of Albert Lee was going straight to the workforce in 2020, so that's quite a change there. And then also how manufacturing was now in the top 4. I believe we talked about that before. We had Freeborn Maurer was there, and they're looking at some apprenticeship programs and line workers for some of the needs there. One of the common threads, they had an IT position that has been posted 2 times, and they cannot fill it. It's a in-office job, and they're just struggling even with high-level positions. So a lot of discussion about what we can do with the college and also school to work programs to enhance some of the pieces for students. Daycare is a huge issue still. That seems like that's becoming more and more of a topic at every meeting we have. There is a task force that's together now looking at that. And talked a lot about the increase of the community business role, the role of poverty in the workforce and getting people to work. Just a real high overview of that, but really good discussion. They go an hour and a half, and there's a lot of information that we get on that, and hopefully we'll have some more updates over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I'll start with just a couple points with the Business Ed Committee. What you'll find is you'll start to see the legislature is actually investing through the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed for those students that are looking at going into career and technical education fields. There's full scholarships for those students. So you'll start to see a lot of that work, and it's really about the workforce. So Business Ed Committee work is going to be very important as we move forward. There's also there's some initiatives around with our Greater Albert Lee Education Project, or if we say it, I say it wrong every time. Albert Lee Greater Education Project, and that's where, because of COVID, we weren't able to do as much with that, but you'll start to see some momentum with John Double's position too, and the Business Ed Committee is going to assist with some of that and making sure we have good alignment with those industries and sectors. And then the last thing that I wanted to just say is that there is an added piece to the work we're doing on the Business Ed Committee about the effects of poverty in the workplace. And so you'll start to see some poverty-informed community type work that's happening, and we'll make sure that the school district is made aware of that through those efforts. I am on the TOY committee, the Teacher of the Year committee, with Bruce, and we had a meeting recently, and kind of it just amazes. We talk about this every month, but it just amazes me the work that goes on and all the moving parts to that committee. So, and then we had a policy committee meeting as well, and we'll talk about those a little bit.
An honor to attend the Superintendent of the Year presentation, Dr. Funk. Congratulations again. Thank you.
Thank you. I also attended the policy committee meeting, which we will be talking about those policies later today. I haven't given my MSBA report, so I'd like to give a report on one of the workshops that I attended that was really interesting. It was put on by Richfield District, and they're an urban district, but they're similar size to us. They have basically the same amount of schools as we do. They have a high amount of free and reduced students as we do, and they have diverse demographics, and had learning gaps in between some of the demographics as we do. So they began a high school transformation plan in 2017, and these are just a few pieces of it. There are more pieces to it, but they removed the barriers to advanced courses and expansion of support courses for students. So they provided all students the opportunity to take AP or college credit classes. They ensured that all students were supported to take and succeed in rigorous courses beginning in 9th grade. And they wanted to send the message that they believed all students can succeed in rigorous courses. They provided professional development and instructional coaching and support for the teachers. And one of the things that they did was they increased course offerings. Well, they went from a 6-period to a 7-period day, but I believe we're already at a 7-period day. They increased course offerings, so they offered seminars for additional support for these classes. So, for example, I think this is how they work it. So if a student takes, say, like a CIS calculus class, they offer a seminar also during the week that the student takes with the same teacher in the same subject, and they're able to work through and get the support that they need to succeed in that class. They offered credit recovery in real time. So some of the pieces of that were that they analyzed fail data to determine what the student did not meet in proficiency. They created personalized learning plans and credit recovery plans for students. They expanded the options for students to recover credits. And with that, they offered flexible scheduling with blended learning models. Students could work at their own pace, one class at a time if they wanted. There was credit for assessment for credit recovery and language proficiency. There was an added e-week with elective and community service options for credit. So some of their results, so they started in 17, some of their results as of 2020 was there was a substantial decrease in the fail rates. They were at about 25% decrease between 19 and 20. There was a substantial increase in enrollment in advanced courses, and the grad rates increased over the state average. And in 2020, they achieved a no achievement gap in rates between white and non-white students. So I thought they had some interesting principles there, especially with offering the seminars to support students to take and succeed in rigorous classes and to see themselves as graduating and succeeding. Thank you.
I was lucky enough to attend the state wrestling tournament, watch my grandson get first in the state. I also attended March 1st toy meeting. I got to pick or help pick the finalists, which is always an exciting time. That reception is going to be April 6th at 3:45 in the Commons. And Neil Score is going to give a real short talk on behalf of the board.
Well, yeah, I'll have you people know that when you started talking about that, I'm thinking, oh my Lord, did I miss that meeting?
No.
But it's April 6th, thank you.
April 6th.
Right. Whatever. And it will be short. It will be the definition of short. All right, thank you. Jill, I'm reminded of a popular subject a long time ago. Jaime Escalante, Stand and Deliver. He taught calculus to ghetto kids in Los Angeles, and they blew away the test that they take. In fact, they did so well that it was assumed that they must have cheated somehow. So it can be done. All right, moving along. Effective and efficient operations. We have a legislative update from Mr. Brad Lundell, who is the Executive Director, Schools for Equity in Education.
Well, thanks for having me down again this year. I just checked my calendar from last year, and I was down, last time I was down was January 19th, 2021, and I think we were all wearing masks or whatever, but again, the thing is it was a lot darker, it was a lot colder, and it was a lot more snow on the ground, and it's easier to find Doors C when it's light outside. So book me for March again next year, or book me for post daylight savings time again. But it's good to be back down here amongst members, and able to today spent the morning in Owatonna and able to follow the legislature from online. The House is still meeting virtually. The Senate is kind of meeting in a hybrid fashion, but everything is online, and they are moving right along. I think things are going to happen very quickly here in the next couple of weeks. This is the first committee deadline for policy bills this Friday. The second deadline for policy bills then is the 1st of April, and then the funding bill should be out by April 8th. I don't think it's anybody's surprise. I guess the governor came forward with a very aggressive spending package on education. The House is probably going to be in that neighborhood. The Senate is, like last year, going to be less than that. But again, we don't know what things will look like until the end, which is the third weekend in May this year. And again, they have to finish on time this year. There can be no special session. Well, there could be a special session, but they need to finish their work. There's no budget year. I think that given kind of the political nature, we've got a very aggressive governor's race on one side of the line. I'm assuming that unless something happens, Governor Walz will be running again, and then we've got a third-party candidate as well. So there's a lot of posturing, a lot of things being kicked around, and how everybody puts their stake in the ground now is probably going to be, we're hearing a lot of things that are being talked about at the legislature now that are probably going to find their way into campaign literature and campaign stances moving as we move into the campaign, officially into the campaign season, if we're not into the campaign season now. I know that Senator Dornick, I think, is moving to remain as to run for this seat again. I was just on the phone back there with Carla Nelson, and she and Dornick got matched up in the redistricting, and I think that Jean is moving down here to run again. So, but let's go. I'll kind of fly back and forth here as I'm usually want to do, but just a little bit of history of our organization. We started in 1979. We're the Association of Stable and Growing School Districts. I didn't start with the organization until 1991, kind of midway through the Skeen lawsuit that established the equalization programs for the debt and referendum equalization, that lawsuit. And so I was one of the few people, I was working for the state when it was filed, so I was on the defendants, and then I started working for the plaintiffs. Not in any kind of official capacity. I was well down the food chain at that juncture, but know that issue back and forth and how equalization, what that means. Then we renamed the organization Schools for Equity, named the organization Schools for Equity in Education back in 1995. Member benefits, a constant presence either at the state capitol or in front of my computer. I think that's how it's working now. The House is going to start opening up in the next couple weeks, and I think that we're going to see people fully back in person probably when the conference committees start. We have general membership meetings, either 4 or 5 per year, depending on whether it's a budget year or not. And at those general membership meetings, we usually try to bring in someone from a political angle and someone from a policy angle to talk about what might be happening that's going to affect you at the legislature, and then also some kind of program we'll talk about, working with students or some kind of issue that or program that you may find beneficial for you as a district. You have the ability to network with districts of similar challenges that may be in other parts of the state. It was great. Richfield's not a member of C, but it was great to hear what Richfield's doing. And again, we've got, I think a lot of times people think there's a changing face in rural Minnesota as to what the student composition is, and I think that a lot of people still think it's not, that those changes haven't taken place. And I think it's important that we are able to, on a statewide basis, to talk about things that are different, things where we share and how people are dealing with things differently throughout the state and getting results. We have data and resources specific to your district, and I can show you some examples of that tonight. And then Community Outreach Liaison, Deb Griffiths has been our Community Outreach Liaison. This is her last session, and we have just hired someone, Kim Springer will be our new community outreach person. And again, I'm getting near the end of my career, and I just was hoping that I wouldn't have to train anybody new in. I'm sure that all of you can. I'm not a very good trainer, put it that way. So we can go to the next slide. Here's a slide that shows Albert Lee is one of our, most of our school districts are below the state average in terms of per pupil revenues in the general ed area. Albert Lee is one of our districts that is above the state average, and if you can see why they're above the state average, it's clearly the higher levels of compensatory, somewhat higher levels of English language learning. I was surprised that your English language learning per pupil wasn't higher than that, but I know that it's something that you're working on here. I think that the other one is the Q comp. You're above the state average in the Q comp. You're below average pretty much everywhere else, and The thing that we work on very, very much is the referendum and local option revenue, and making sure that your taxpayers aren't paying more per education dollar than they are in other parts of the state. You can flip to the next slide. I can show you one back. Okay, there's the referendum market value comparison, and you can see that for your high level of referendum, or relatively high level of referendum, your property wealth is amongst the lowest in the state on a per pupil basis. You're below $400,000 per pupil in of referendum market value. If you look at the highest...
So Brad, what does that mean to the taxpayers of our community?
Taxpayers in community, well, if you look at the first tier equalization factor is $567,000. You divide that, your number, by that 567, that's going to give you an aid levy mix. But everything above that 567 is going to be local effort. So if you look at the highest suburban district in the state, district out in the western metro suburbs, they have a $1.8 million of referendum market value per student. That means above the equalizing factor here, where you're getting basically, the equalizing factor basically says everybody below that equalizing factor gets $1 every time they run around the track. That district out in the western suburbs is getting $3 every time they run around the track. I always use track as an example because this is the only sport I was any good at. They just told me, follow the guy in front of you and try to pass him at the end. They didn't want me to be ahead. They think I'd get lost, especially in cross country. But I think that's really what that means, is that you're expending more effort here for those dollars. And in the local option revenue, it's even a little bit worse because the equalizing factor is lower. So you're paying considerably more per education dollar than they are in property wealthy districts. And again, a lot of it has to do with commercial industrial concentration. Some of it has to do with higher value homes. Ag land is off the referendum market value, so that's one of the things I think that if you look at many districts, maybe not so much Albert Lea, but if you get into some districts where you have high ag concentrations, if you flip to the next slide, you'll see the adjusted net tax capacity that has ag land in it at it's included in there at a lower level, but it's still included. You'll see that the state average is higher, but Albert Lea is still below the state average, well below the state average when it comes to the adjusted net tax capacity. That would be your adjusted net tax capacity would be your almost all the levies except local option revenue and equity revenue and your operating referendum. So we can talk about that a little bit in terms of one of the big bills we're working on, which it would bring greater equalization to the education property tax system. So move to the next slide. What we did in 2021, you've probably heard a lot about these things from your local legislators. There was a good increase on the basic formula of 2.45% and 2.00%. They maintained the current voluntary pre-kindergarten seats, some relief on curbing growth in special education cross-subsidy, and there were very few new mandates. I think one of the things always to remember, and we talk a little bit about, the formula is something that's very easy for legislators to explain, and the special ed cross-subsidy is something that's kind of difficult for them to explain. I think Albert Lea might be one of those districts where the money would have been better going on to the special education cross-subsidy than it would have been going on to the formula because of your higher than state average cross-subsidy. And again, that's, it's always one of those things where there's distributional issues every time you look at a state formula and you start playing, fiddling around with the dials. It's going to be different in every state. But then, so special education cross-subsidy is money to the general fund, and I think a lot of people think, well, you're just paying for special ed. Yes, but we're already taking money out of our general fund and spending it on special ed. This would mean we'd be spending less. And again, that's having been around the legislature for, well, 45 years now, you always lose them on the second sentence. The first sentence, you can get it, you can keep them, and that's the same with the public. It's that second sentence sometimes that they just can't get around the corner on, and I think that's the one thing always when you talk about special education cross-subsidy, it is basically, it's a backdoor way of putting money on the formula, and for districts with high special education cross-subsidies is something that really is important. Looking forward to what we're doing this session, I talked a little bit about the comprehensive equalization program, and that's going to bring greater tax fairness to the local option revenue, the operating referendum, debt service categories. Also adds some money to the local option revenue and also to the long-term facilities maintenance. As introduced, it'd be $1.3 million in property tax relief for Albert Lea, kind of split between the operating referendum and the local option revenue. Senate file, House File 2657 now does have a Senate companion, Senate File 4124. That would basically eliminate the special education cross-subsidy. And in the case of, that's about 900 million, or 750 million this year to the state would have to put forward, 890 million next year, and 920 million a year after that. For Albert Lea, that would mean about an additional, one-time cross subsidy aid of, well, it should be more than this, but it says, oh wait, yeah, it'd be another $789,000. So.
Be more than that.
What's that?
Should be more than that. Our cross subsidy is about 3.8 million.
Right. Okay. Well then, someone needs
so
to.
That's the EL. That's the English language cross subsidy, I bet.
Well, this is the well, I don't know. I'll take your word for it, but again, it eliminates the special. Yeah.
Special education is 3.8 million.
Right.
It's what we take out of the general ed budget to pay for the shortfall of special education.
Right. And this would eliminate that. And again, it's it's quite pricey, but I think one of the things that we talk about that these are funds that are dictated by IEPs and things that you need to do or things that you're required to do by state and federal law, and that really does add up in a way. And again, there used to be a special education, kind of a catch-up levy back in the 1990s, but they eliminated that. And since that time, the special ed cross-subsidy has just absolutely ballooned, and there's really no backfill. I think the governor has put some money in his budget as well, but certainly not to the level of 2657. House File 4005, Senate File 3380 is another additional $8 per pupil unit in safe schools revenue. Would also include cyber security as well. I think that there's a couple of areas, as I said earlier, the House bill is probably going to be a lot like it was last year, where there's going to be a broad range of things that they're going to fund. I think the Senate bill is probably going to have several things, not as many, but they want to do some money on literacy in the Senate, the LETTERS program and some other literacy initiatives, but they also are indicated that they may be open to doing some things on special ed, and they may be open to doing some things on safe schools. The House has heard many more bills on funding than the Senate has. And I think you're going to see some money there probably, if not on the formula, on special ed and EL, the EL cross subsidy as well is something that they're looking at. And I think that again, we'll just have to see how it all plays out. I think one of the things that plays into this is that we don't know what the economy is going to be doing a year from now. But I think there is some concern given with the level of inflation and also with the international tensions, what that might mean. Right now we're looking at a $4.3 billion projected surplus in the next biennium. I don't know if people are confident that all 4.3 billion of that is going to be there. I think that the 4.1 of one-time money that's in this biennium that would end up, that's cash on hand. So, I mean, there's $4 billion that's just kind of sitting there right now, and we're hopeful we can tap into some of that. The problem with the equalization formulas is that those are ongoing, and that's always the hill that we have to climb as those things go into the base. But on the one-time money, I think you may see, at least on a one-time basis, some working on the cross-subsidies on special ed and EL and a couple of other places. And then whatever, I know that the Senate, I don't know if you guys use the letters program for literacy, but again, that's something that the Senate is actually absolutely sold on. It's language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, and they really think that that's, they're really zeroing in on literacy, and both on pre-service and existing teachers as well. Again, we'll be resisting all new mandates. That's not to say that we'll know more about what's going to be on the table. The House is releasing its omnibus policy bill on Wednesday. You've probably heard a lot of things from the School Board Association. They really want to tell you how to run your school. And you'll see some of those things, and we'll certainly get that copy out to you on Wednesday as to what some of the things that they think you should be doing better or doing differently. We resist those. We trust our local districts. You do a great job. You're the people that are closest to the voters, and you guys all follow the law. So again, we trust our local school districts that are doing the right thing. And again, but again, there's going to be enough. There's always something to discuss. Something's not getting done somewhere. So we have to get out the paint roller rather than use the watercolor brush. Let's use the paint roller and bring everybody in. So, with that, I guess we can move our mission is to make sure that all public school children have access to high quality education regardless of where they live in Minnesota. I really appreciate your support over the years, and again, look forward to continuing to work with you. And again, can move to my contact information there. We're MASA, where I've been a tenant, that building has now been sold, so the office mail will be going somewhere else starting in May, and then also we're probably going to, my cell phone's probably going to be the best way to get a hold of me, but I will be keeping the same email address. So again, really look forward to continuing working with you, and again, whatever questions you might have, things you hear that you think I need to know, and I mean, I always enjoy hearing from members as to when you talk to a legislator or if you see something emerging in your community. Always helps if you let me know on some of those things, because it just helps me be more effective in representing you. So. Thank you, Brad. Questions?
Yeah. So you mentioned property values and how it affects levies and things like that. Is there any proposed legislation that will help with the financial equity between rural and metro schools?
Well, I think they're looking at this year I think the things that in your instance, probably the special ed cross subsidy, that I think is one. That has a differential effect, but I think what we've seen in regional centers, and I think we see this along the whole the 90 corridor, you've just seen growing numbers of non-English speaking students. So again, that I think is one of the things that we've been working on. I think the other thing then is the differences. One thing I do want to mention, and I think that this will be something to watch, is that they're talking about changing the proxy for the compensatory revenue formula. It's based on free and reduced price lunch now, but because there's this thing about when the pandemic hit and there was all the meals were delivered and nobody was sending in their paperwork, we saw a great reduction in compensatory revenue statewide, and that affected districts differently. they're trying to figure out a better way to calculate that, and one of the things they're talking about is making qualification for medical assistance an automatic qualifier so that people don't have to hand in paperwork. The problem is that you miss people then, and a lot of, especially, this is one place where incomes tend to be lower outside the metropolitan area, and so you have people that are qualified for reduced price lunch that aren't qualified for medical assistance. And those people are going to fall out of the formula. And so in many cases, you're going to see that's something we need to really watch. Because I think, again, income differences, the incomes are lower outside the 7-county metro area, and that needs to be a reflection of that as they move. Because, again, medical assistance, the state keeps saying we're going to pick up more people with medical assistance, but we don't know where those people are. My guess is in many metro districts, the medical assistance qualifier, you're going to see numbers higher. But in rural Minnesota, you may see a number of districts where the count will go down. And that's something we have to really keep our eyes on.
I did have one question. My understanding on the special ed cross subsidy is that the regulations, a lot of them come from the federal level. Is there any hope that funding will come from the federal level, or is that just a lost cause?
It was really funny that you would mention that, because just last week in a legislative hearing, it was almost like a leapfrog game, because one person said, well, I called Michelle Fischbach, and I told the Republican said, I called Michelle Fischbach, and I told her to take care of this. Well, then somebody from the metro area said, well, I called Dean Phillips, and I told him to take care of it. And so it's like everybody's being told to take care of it. It's just a matter as to, I don't know if they ever will. I think that it is something, and we just talked about that a little bit this morning at the regional meeting, that this is serious stuff, and I think that if the feds aren't going to do it, they should just cut the charade and just say, we're not going to fund 40%, so just go away. But they did say 40% back in 1975, and they have not come close to it ever. But I think that that's one we need to, I think you've got a congressional race down here. I think that if you go to those congressional forums, just, mention this. And I say, get people to stand up on the issue, because I think it's very, very important. If you're not going to make good on the commitment, then, it's just again, just another level of frustration. But I think if we could get up to 25%, or 30% instead of the 40%, I think that would be great progress. So.
And Brad, they're what, about 18 to 19%?
Yeah, if that. I think, probably in the low teens now. But I think with the 2009, that stimulus package in the Obama administration, I think they kicked that up to, they threw in some money, and I think it got up to like in the high teens. But after that stimulus went away, went back down, and it has stayed back down.
Yeah, do you anticipate that House File 2657, there's no corresponding one from the Senate side, do you expect?
Well,
there is one now, right?
Yeah, there is one, 4124. But it's introduced by a Democrat, so it's something that's probably not going to get heard. But it did get heard. It did get introduced at least. I think that what we're hearing from the Senate side is that they may be open to doing, especially with all that one-time money sitting there, that they may be willing to do some things on a one-time basis. Probably won't be as big as House File 2657, but it would be, if we could get, the governor comes in at about 80 million. I think it's one of those places where, with a lot of that money sitting there on a one-time basis, of course you have to think about the unemployment insurance and some of those other picking up from the pandemic things that need to be cleaned up. I think that there's still going to be, a couple $2 billion left when all the things that kind of need to be done, those adjustments. So yeah, you'd think that they could, fork over a couple $100 million. I think that's where you need to talk to Senator Dornick and Senator Nelson, your other southern Minnesota legislators to say how important that is to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, and again, let's book next March.
All right, moving on to policy revisions. Mary Jo.
First, I'll start to answer Brad's question on letters. Letters is really, it's just a professional training. It's not a curriculum. And, you know, in Albert Lee, we identified 4 to 5 years ago, said we need more explicit phonics. It's based on the same work of Louisa Moats. And so when you've heard a lot of work of phonics, really great reading is what we adopted, and that's based on this researcher's work. And I just asked Sheila now, because I know we have some special ed teachers going through, and so we'll have 4 teachers who are going through the Minnesota training. It's more special ed teachers across the state, or at least in the Big 9 that are signed up. So there's your letters answer. Okay, on to the policies. Again, policy committee met on March 7th. They're all a first reading, MSBA approved, and really just update based on some statute changes. So today we're asking for approval. So the first policy is the graduation requirements, policy 613. And so I put the major updates, and I know you all got these in your board packet for review. So just for the outline, the major changes is that, you know, as we talk more career and college readiness in Minnesota, to take away that all students should be taking the ACT, that we look at other areas of assessments to help students make better decisions of their career and college choices. So that's a major change. The other change is just identifying the ways in which schools do work with their students and staff to ensure we're meeting these needs. So that's where you're hearing a lot of, you know, the career and college planning, and we're doing interest surveys, skill surveys. You've heard us talk about Naviance. A lot of Naviance offers all these strength skills, et cetera, for students to really look at careers and what best meets what they want to do, as well as where their talents are. And then the last change in the policy is early graduation. Early graduation has been a thing before, but now it's officially in statute and in policy to say that if a student meets all the requirements in working with the school board and the superintendent and the high school principal, that they could graduate early. So that is the major changes. And then as well as at the end of the policy, all the legal references have been updated for the changing statutes, et cetera. So I guess I'm asking for approval on the first one, or Chair Score, do you want to approve all 4 at the end? How would you like to do this? Okay. There's nothing significant in any of the changes tonight, so okay. The next policy is 620, called Credit for Learning. And basically, the major, it's not even a change. It's just ensuring that any student whose PSEO attends an out-of-state school, a private school, homeschool, or now online learning gets credit for the courses they take. And so that is the section 1 and 2. And then section 5, it just states that if a student is PSEO, and their program was approved, that they have met the Minnesota academic standards, which just means a guidance counselor doesn't have to compare the standards from the PSEO class to the high school class that's being offered with the standards. And then the last change is that the legal references have been updated on that. Any questions on that one?
I have a question back on the first one, if you want to take
Sure.
questions out. Well, it's not really a question, but something that had come up during our policy committee discussion about the grad requirements was it doesn't really concern the policy, but we did talk about requirements to participate in a graduation commencement ceremony. So, and I know it's been a bit in our discussion over the past year But I would like to see that the requirements for commencement participation to be considered by us as far as the handbook in the coming days.
Yeah, and that is first cousin of some of the issues that we're going to be voting on today, but not specifically including that package. Yeah, and that's probably a topic that deserves some discussion. I don't know if it makes any difference, but no, the mic's on. I'd like to go back to the first item as well. That I'm certainly not disagreeing, but I couldn't help but notice one thing that jumped out was that geometry is no longer included as the geometry course is no longer included as a requirement for graduation, as I understand it in reading that. Which I'm not opposed to that.
The Greeks would have been.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we just follow MDE graduation requirements.
Yeah, but I just thought that was rather interesting. I would hope
You know, and
that,
the graduation requirements, and this will continue to change. You're going to see anytime something changes at MDE as far as grad requirements, this policy will change, i.e. the next thing coming up will be earth science. So earth science in 4 years will be a graduation requirement, where it hasn't been because it's not a required course.
I'm assuming that the math standards that relate to geometry then will provide for those skills that were included in the entire geometry course will be somehow presented in the rest of the math.
Yeah,
curriculum.
geometry is still taught,
Which,
yes, within the
again,
standards.
I think it's a great idea because this geometry is a wonderful subject and has lots of applications, but the full course in it probably is, in my opinion, was never really called for. All right, sorry, go on.
So that's 613. And then the last two, 614 and 615, there is no change to the actual policy sections. It's just updates in the reference. So you saw only the redlining in the reference area for statute number changes. So with that, asking for approval or adoption of these policies.
I'll move to approve the 4 policies reviewed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 4 policy recommendations. Any further discussion?
Just for clarification, it's a first reading, but also final reading, so our vote will finalize the policies tonight.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Any other comments or discussions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And that exhausts our agenda items. Our next meeting is April 4th at 5 p.m. I assume that's a Monday. All right, meeting is adjourned.